Hey, what's up, everyone? This is DeathGroundReviews, and I'm just sitting down to give you another book review. Today's book is called Horror, Another 100 Best Books. It's edited by Stephen Jones and Kim Newman. Basically, it's a collection of essays written by masters of the horror genre, and they were told to select a favorite book of theirs that they felt influenced them the most and to write a homage essay on that book, and I enjoyed it overall. It was one of those books that I could just sit down and dip into it randomly. I didn't have to read it, cover to cover. And a lot of interesting titles that stood out to me. There's a book called Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon, and that one I definitely want to read in the future. It has a very literary quality to it, but it's categorized as a horror story, and I'm just interested in how that works, especially because it came out, it looks like in the 1970s, and I'm just interested how it did so well at that time. I don't know, when The Exorcist came out and Salem's Lot and all that. There was a book selected in here that it was surprised me it was categorized as a horror story. It's called New Grub Street by George Gissing. And this book was written back in, the Victorian era. And it's just basically about a writer. Edwin Reardon is the main character, and he's a writer in the Victorian era, and he's struggling to make a living and take care of his wife and child. And it's a horror story for writers, basically. But it really piqued my interest. I'm just interested to see how it takes you down the darker side of that. I'll read you a little excerpt, because the essay provides an excerpt of the book. Here, let's read it. The days darkened. Through November rains and fogs, Marian went her usual way to the museum, and toiled there among the other toilers. Perhaps once a week she allowed herself to stray about the alleys of the reading room, scanning furtively those who sat at the desks. One day at the end of the month, she sat with books open before her, but by no effort could fix her attention upon them. It was gloomy, and one could scarcely see to read. A taste of fog grew perceptible in the warm, headachy air. She kept asking herself what was the use and purpose of such a life as she was condemned to lead, when already there was more good literature in the world than any mortal could cope with in his lifetime. Here was she exhausting herself in the manufacture of printed stuff, which no one even pretended to be more than a commodity for the day's market. What unspeakable folly to write! Was not that the joy and the privilege of one who had an urgent message for the world? The fog grew thicker. She looked up at the windows beneath the dome and saw that they were a dusky yellow. Then her eye discerned an official walking along the upper gallery, and in pursuance of her grotesque humor, her mocking misery, she likened him to a black, lost soul, doomed to wander in an eternity of vain research along endless shelves. Or again, the readers who sat here at these radiating lines of desks, what were they but hapless flies caught in a huge web? Its nucleus, the great circle of the catalogue. Darker, darker. From the towering wall of volumes seemed to emanate visible motes, intensifying the obscurity. In a moment, the book-lined circumference of the room would be but a featureless prison limit. It brings to mind the passage I heard of forever learning but never understanding. It'd be fun to read this book, though. Just sit down and put some deeper thought into it. Right now I just have read the short essay about it. And then another entry was Charles Dickens, his novel, A Christmas Carol. And I've heard of A Christmas Carol. I've seen the movies. I think I've even, read excerpts of the book back in a literary class back in college. But I never thought of it as a horror story, but in a lot of ways it is, because kind of a main theme of it is about the end that we all will face, death. And of course that barely scratches the surface of it, but that's kind of a thing emphasized in the essay. Elizabeth Hand is the one that writes the essay on Dickens's story, A Christmas Carol. But yeah, it's one of those books that just is a fun afternoon read, you know. You sit down with your favorite drink and, you know, you open it at random and you read an essay on there and ponder it. And, like, there were some fun essays in here on books that I have read. There was one on Pet Sematary and one on Misery. I really loved the essay on Misery because, you know, I agreed completely with what made the book work so well. About how there's multiple levels. You know, one level is a horror story driven through an emotional core, and then there's another level that is commentary on literary values. Excuse me if I'm stumbling with my words. A little bit tired this evening, so. But yeah, I highly recommend this book if you're a horror fan, because, you know, you might discover some books you've never read before in the horror genre. But it also makes you think about what constitutes a story as a horror story. I've always thought, especially when I was younger, that if it just made you feel scared, it was a horror story. But how do they market that, I guess? How do academics think of a horror story? How do various horror authors in the horror community define a horror story? What do you guys think? I guess that's the question I want to pose for this video is, how would you define a horror story? What criteria does a work of fiction need to meet in order to be defined as a horror story? But also, I just wanted to let you guys know I've got a stack of books sitting here next to me. Just wanted to let you know some upcoming books I'm going to read and review. First one on my list I'm in the process of reading is The Tear Collector by Sean Burgess. It's funny, I actually won this book in a contest on Twitter. I had to select a number between like 1 and 1,000 or something like that, and I was one number off from the correct number. It was awesome. I got a signed copy of it from Mr. Burgess. The next book I want to read, this one's kind of shifting gears a little bit. It goes more into the suspense genre. It's called The Collector by John Fowles. In fact, many consider this book the first psychological thriller, one of the first psychological thrillers. And, or the modern psychological thrillers. But I'm excited to read that. And that'll probably go into more discussion about definitions, you know. Because I saw this book also listed in another 100 best horror books. So, and then Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Guess you could call this dark fantasy, the dark fantastic. Firestarter by Stephen King. I've read this one before, but I wanted to read it again. I had such a great time reading this book. I was working in a gas station, and man, it just made the day fly by. I loved it. But I want to see how I feel about it now, you know? Maybe I'll feel very different about the book now. The Damnation Game by Clive Barker. I've only read a short story by Clive Barker. It was about like this guy's hands that have minds of their own, and I think they start trying to kill him or something like that. It's been a while since I read it, but it was a creepy little story. He's a good author of body horror. And then I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to read a science fiction book, The Cosmic Puppets by Philip K. Dick. Yes, I do enjoy other types of fiction besides horror. I am a science fiction fan. I'm a suspense fan. I actually enjoy literary novels, you know, classics. On the list as well, I'm going to read The Divine Comedy. I had read the Inferno for a Dante class in college, but I haven't read the entire Divine Comedy, so I'm definitely going to read that, and maybe I'll do like little videos for each section that I read of that book. I think that'd be fun, and we could all discuss the book. Maybe you can read it with me or something, and we can discuss it together. And then Night Chills by Dean Koontz. Dean Koontz, an interesting author. A lot of, man, he's prolific. Whenever I go into Barnes & Noble, like, there's almost an entire, 3 shelves dedicated to this guy's books. I mean, he has a fascinating schedule. He gets up at 7 in the morning, walks his dog, then he sits down at his computer, eats breakfast, and then he starts writing. And he focuses on one page at a time. So he'll write a page, then he'll print it out, he'll edit it, and then he'll rewrite it until he gets it just right, and then he moves on to the next page. And he does that from 8 in the morning until 7 p.m. 7 days a week, man. And some days he gets 1 page done. Some days he gets 20 pages done, but fascinating. I could never concentrate that much. I can only stand maybe a couple hours of writing. And then the Poet by Michael Connelly, with a foreword by Stephen King. I don't know much about The Poet. I've heard the title, I've heard of Michael Connelly, but I don't know anything about the book. And I bought it years ago and just put it in my shelf, and then moved around, and lost it in my bins. And I finally found it again and went, I've got to read this. Looks cool. But yeah, that's my upcoming reading list, guys. So feel free to join me in the reading, Then we can all discuss it together. But that's kind of my plans for the future with the channel, too. I kind of want to, because I have some other literary interests. I kind of want to explore some science fiction, some more suspense. Kind of want to explore maybe some fantasy, different books like that. Maybe even some more classical literature. There's a wide range of things I truly enjoy, and I'd like to explore it in the channel with everyone too. But anyway, guys, yeah, horror, another 100 best books. Check it out. See what you discover. And that's my book review for today. I hope everyone has a good night, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.